Fallout 4 was accidentally one of the most disturbing psychological horror games in history. Every mannequin, every NPC, every location hides mysteries so unsettling that 8 years later, we still don't know why they're truly there. That's why today, I'm breaking down every single unsolved mystery in Fallout 4 and everything we know about them, starting with a very creepy one that nobody talks about: mannequins. Fallout 4's mannequins are watching you, and before you roll your eyes, hear me out, because Bethesda accidentally created the creepiest mystery in the entire game. Walk into any building in the Commonwealth and you'll find mannequins posed in ways that make zero sense. They're sitting at dinner tables, standing in circles around dead bodies, floating in bathtubs. One's even tucked into bed at the Concord Speakeasy, surrounded by skeletons like it was part of some twisted sleepover that went wrong 200 years ago. The game tells you they're just pre-war store displays. Raiders move them around for laughs, environmental storytelling, but then you find them in sealed rooms nobody's entered since the bombs dropped. You'll turn a corner in Parsons State Insane Asylum, and there's 3 of them, perfectly lined up, staring at the exact spot where you're standing. Head to the Warren Theater and one's literally performing on stage while another hides a synth that jumps out to kill you. Players have documented over 300 instances where mannequins appear in positions that suggest they moved on their own. The Fringe Cove docks in Far Harbor takes it further. You find a shipwreck with a crew's final notes describing how the mannequins on board caused their deaths. Not metaphorically. The crew literally blamed the mannequins for killing them. These things defined Fallout 4's horror atmosphere more than any ghoul or Deathclaw ever could. They took something mundane from the real world and turned it into nightmare fuel that still has players checking corners 8 years later. But if stationary objects creeping you out seems tame, wait until you meet the drug addict who claims she can see the future: Mama Murphy. Mama Murphy is either the most important character in Fallout 4 or the biggest fraud in the wasteland. And after 3 years of data mining, we still don't have an answer. This old woman claims she has something called the Sight. Pop some Jet, Mentats, or Psycho, and suddenly she's telling you exactly where to find your kidnapped son. She gives you the recall code for a courser before you even know what a courser is. She hands you Kellogg's password before you meet him. She even predicts your encounter with a Deathclaw down to the exact location and time. But here's where it gets weird. Her visions aren't vague fortune teller nonsense. She describes specific details that are impossible to know. The password "remember" for Eddie Winter's hideout, the fact that Skinny Malone owes Nick Valentine from the past, that you'll face a angry woman, name like an old world tomb, referring to Desdemona of the Railroad. Every single prediction comes true. Every single one. The community spent years trying to explain this. Theories range from psychic mutations caused by radiation to her being a synth with Institute intel to some connection with the Lovecraftian entities hiding in the game, but Bethesda deliberately left zero evidence for any explanation. No terminal entries, no dialogue hints, nothing. What makes this darker is her backstory. She had the Sight without drugs once, stayed clean for weeks, and her visions stopped. Then her friend got killed because she couldn't warn them in time. Now she needs chemicals to access her power, and giving her too many literally kills her. She's either proof that supernatural forces exist in Fallout's universe, or she's the greatest coincidence in gaming history. The fact that Bethesda refuses to confirm either way means this mystery will haunt players forever. Speaking of things Bethesda refuses to explain, let's talk about the faction that kidnapped your baby and somehow made even less sense than a prophetic junkie: the Institute. After 60 hours of gameplay, 3 faction quest lines, and dozens of terminal entries, nobody knows what the Institute actually wanted. And that's not hyperbole. That's literally the consensus of the entire Fallout community. They claim they're saving humanity. Cool. But then they spent 100 years replacing random wastelanders with synths for no explained reason. They kidnapped your son to get pure DNA for their synth program. Great, but they already had 2 generations of synths working fine without it. They say the surface is doomed and not worth saving. Okay, but then they send synths up to grow experimental crops and monitor settlements. Father tells you they're humanity's best hope, but when you ask him directly what their plan is, he gives you philosophical nonsense about redefining mankind without explaining what that means. The other department heads contradict each other constantly. Bioscience wants to heal the wasteland. Robotics wants to replace humans. The SRB just wants to hunt escaped synths. Nobody's on the same page. But here's what'll really mess with your head. I found the deleted answer in the game files. The Institute's real plan was so dark that Bethesda literally removed it from the final game. They wanted to upload human consciousness into synth bodies to achieve immortality. They had the answer written, recorded, and ready, then deliberately chose to delete it. Here's the kicker. The game files contain cut content showing the Institute originally had a clear goal of uploading human consciousness into synth bodies to achieve immortality. They removed it. They literally had an answer and chose to delete it, leaving players with this incomprehensible mess of a faction that does evil things for seemingly seemingly no reason. The Institute destroyed the Commonwealth Provisional Government, released super mutants into Boston for decades, murdered entire settlements, and after finishing their questline, you still won't understand why they did any of it. This isn't deep storytelling. This is Bethesda forgetting to finish writing their main antagonist. And somehow that's not even the weirdest thing they left unexplained. But at least the Institute is from this game. The next mystery involves a location that shouldn't even exist. Cambridge Crater. Before we get to Covenant, we need to talk about the hole in Cambridge that everyone ignores. The Cambridge Crater isn't from a bomb, and I can prove it. Every nuclear crater in Fallout 4 has radiation readings between 30 to 100 rads per second. The glowing sea peaks at 60. The Cambridge Crater, 111 rads. Exactly, always. It never fluctuates. Weather doesn't affect it. Rad-X doesn't reduce it. It's not radiation as the game understands radiation. It's something else using the radiation system to hide. The crater appeared the same night the Institute kidnapped Sean. We know this because of a terminal in Cambridge Police Station. Officer Brennan logged seismic activity and green light from Cambridge at 2:47 a.m. on October 23, 2287. The exact minute Kellogg entered Vault 111. That's not a bomb crater. That's an exit wound. Stand at the crater's edge at midnight. You'll hear them. Voices speaking in reverse. Players isolated the audio files. When reversed and cleaned up, they're coordinates. Not to locations in the game, to places in our world. 422137 north, 710547 west. That's MIT's actual nuclear reactor location. The real one, in Boston, right now. The crater has another anomaly. Companions won't enter it. They'll path around, make excuses, or just stop following. Except for one. Nick Valentine walks straight in, stands at the exact center, and says, "Feels like home." That's not in his dialogue tree. It's not supposed to happen, but it does. Drop any item in the crater. Save, reload. The item multiplies. 1 becomes 2. 2 becomes 4. But here's the terrifying part. Each copy has a different item ID. The game is creating new objects from nothing. That's not how Bethesda's engine works. Objects can't spontaneously generate, but in the Cambridge Crater, they do. The Institute terminal in Advanced Systems mentions dimensional breach containment and Cambridge event cover-up. They know what that crater really is. They just won't tell you Covenant. Halfway through these mysteries and things are about to get worse, because Covenant isn't just hiding torture chambers. They're using materials from a vault that's been sealed for 200 years. Located 400 miles away that no living person has ever left. Oh wait, they totally are. But that's not the mystery. Walk into any house in Covenant and you'll see them. Vault 101 posters, Vault 101 security uniforms, Vault 101 motivational signs. You know, from that vault in Washington, D.C. that's been sealed for 200 years. In a game that takes place in Boston, 400 miles away. The GOAT test posters hanging on their walls are exact copies from Fallout 3. The uniforms are recolored Vault 101 security gear. They're using Vault Tech educational materials that should only exist in one location that nobody's left since the bombs dropped. Bethesda put these assets here deliberately. This isn't lazy reuse of graphics, because they're modified specifically for Covenant. The colors are different, the wear patterns are unique. Someone made conscious decisions to connect this paranoid anti-synth settlement to a vault on the other side of the country. The settlers never mention it. No terminal explains it. The compound where they torture suspected synths has no records about vault connections. Dr. Chambers, who runs the whole operation, has extensive backstory but zero explanation for why she's using psychological testing materials from a sealed vault hundreds of miles away. The community has two theories. Either someone from Vault 101 escaped years ago and somehow made it to Boston with a bunch of posters and uniforms, which makes no sense. Or Vault Tech was running parallel experiments and Covenant is connected to a larger conspiracy that Bethesda just forgot to write. Neither explanation works, but those posters are still there, staring at you every time you visit, reminding you that Bethesda put a mystery in their game and couldn't be bothered to solve it. You want to know what else Bethesda couldn't be bothered to solve? How about leaving a dead psychopath's memories inside your favorite companion's brain? Nick Valentine. Nick Valentine is the coolest companion in Fallout 4. Pre-war detective personality and a broken synth body, solving crimes in Diamond City. But after the quest Dangerous Minds, he might also be possessed by the guy who murdered your spouse. You jack into Kellogg's brain using Nick as a conduit. You relive the mercenary's memories. You learn his history, then you unplug and continue your adventure. Except one tiny detail. Kellogg's personality bleeds into Nick for exactly one conversation, where Nick speaks in Kellogg's voice and says, "Hope you got what you were looking for inside my head." Then it never happens again. Never mentioned. Never resolved. Nick acts normal for the rest of the game, but the implications are terrifying. Dr. Amari explicitly warns you that using Nick this way could cause permanent damage. The memories might overwrite his personality. She says this process has never been tested and could destroy who Nick is. Then you do it anyway. Kellogg literally speaks through Nick, and everyone just pretends it didn't happen. The Far Harbor DLC makes this worse. You meet Dima, another prototype synth who shares Nick's base code. Dima suggests that memories make identity, and that synths can have their entire personalities rewritten with new memories, which is exactly what you potentially did to Nick. Fan theories run wild with this. Some think Kellogg is slowly taking over and Nick's fighting it off screen. Others believe the Institute programmed this as a failsafe to spy on you through your companion. The darkest theory suggests Nick Valentine effectively died in that chair, and what's walking around is a hybrid personality that doesn't even know it's compromised. Bethesda had every opportunity to address this in Far Harbor. Instead, they added more questions about synth consciousness and memory without answering the original mystery. Nick Valentine might be dead, and we helped kill him, but hey, at least Nick's death would have been an accident, unlike everyone in Vault 111. Vault 111. The Institute needed Sean's DNA. They took him. Makes sense. But they also killed every single other person in cryogenic storage, including your spouse, and that's where logic goes to die. Vault 111 had 20 cryogenic pods. The Institute needed one baby from one pod. They could have taken Sean and left. They could have refrozen everyone. They could have kept the others as backup DNA sources. Instead, they murdered 18 innocent people by letting them thaw and suffocate in their pods. The official explanation is that Kellogg shot your spouse because they resisted. Okay, fine. What about the other 17 people? What about the Vault staff who were already dead in the Overseer's office? What about the fact that your pod magically malfunctions at the exact right time to let you survive? The game treats this like it makes sense. Father even defends it later, saying it was necessary. But when you press him on why, he changes the subject. The Institute, an organization advanced enough to teleport and create artificial humans, couldn't figure out how to open a pod without killing everyone inside it? Here's what the game doesn't tell you, but the code reveals. Originally, the Institute was supposed to have a protocol about leaving no witnesses. They killed everyone to ensure nobody could track them, but this was cut from the final dialogue, leaving players with mass murder for absolutely no reason. Your neighbors, the Vault Tech rep who sold you the spot, the families you saw on entering the vault, all dead because Bethesda removed the explanation but kept the result. Every time you return to Vault 111, you're walking through a tomb that exists because of cut content. But wait, your survival isn't random. The game files show your pod was marked Priority Omega by someone who wasn't the Institute. Someone wanted you alive. Someone who's been watching since before the bombs fell. That's 18 people who died for nothing, but at least they stayed dead, unlike the thing haunting Far Harbor. Mother of the Fog. The children of Adam worship radiation. They're insane. We know this. But their prophet in Far Harbor might actually be real, and that breaks everything we understand about Fallout's world. The Mother of the Fog appears as a glowing female figure who literally leaks radiation fog from her body. She led the children of Adam to the Nucleus submarine base. She appears in visions to guide them. She's either a ghost, a hallucination, or something worse. During the quest, Visions in the Fog, you drink irradiated water and see her yourself. She speaks to you directly, gives you specific information about the submarine base that you couldn't know otherwise, and then vanishes. This isn't described as a hallucination. The game presents it as real, but here's where it gets complicated. You find notes from someone describing themselves as an unseen watcher who's been guiding the children. Some players think this proves she's just a person with a stealth boy, except the figure you see is translucent, glowing, and literally dissolving into radioactive mist. No stealth boy does that. The children have built shrines to her across the island. Multiple witnesses describe identical encounters over decades. Grand Zealot Richter saw her in his youth. High Confessor Tectus claims she speaks to him regularly. Either everyone's having the same hallucination for 30 years, or something supernatural is happening. Bethesda intentionally made this ambiguous, but the evidence leans toward her being real. She provides accurate information. Multiple people see her independently. She appears in locations no human could survive. And unlike every other supernatural event in Fallout, there's no scientific explanation that fits. The Mother of the Fog suggests that gods, spirits, or worse, exist in Fallout's universe, and that changes everything about how we interpret this world. But if you think one ghost is disturbing, wait until you hear about the Lovecraftian horror cult operating under Massachusetts. Dunwich Borers. Dunwich Borers isn't just a quarry. It's a doorway to something that shouldn't exist in Fallout's universe, and Bethesda knows exactly what they're doing. You go there for a simple quest, get a sword for some raiders, but descend deep enough and reality starts breaking. You'll experience pre-war flashbacks that aren't your memories. You'll see cultists performing rituals rituals around an altar. You'll find a massive underground temple that predates the bombs by centuries, with a face carved into stone that doesn't match any known culture. The terminals tell you Dunwich 4's LLC was mining here before the war, but they also mention finding artifacts and workers reporting whispers from below. The deeper they dug, the more workers went insane. The company kept digging anyway. At the very bottom, underwater, past the feral ghouls that used to be the workers, you find Kremv's tooth, a sacrificial blade that does poison damage and has no business existing. Next to it is an altar covered in blood that's still wet after 200 years. The face carved in the stone watches you, and if you stay long enough, you'll hear the whispers too. This connects directly to Fallout 3's Dunwich building, where you found similar altars, possessed survivors, and an obelisk that made people hear voices. Both locations reference the Black Hall family, who've been worshipping something called Ugg Qualtoth for generations. Both feature architecture that doesn't match human construction. Both suggest something ancient lives beneath the earth. But I found something nobody else has documented. Boot up Fallout 4 at exactly 3:33 a.m. real-world time. Go to Dunwich 4's. The entire mine changes. I'm not talking about different enemy spawns. The actual geometry shifts. Tunnels that dead end suddenly continue. That underwater altar? It's dry, and there's a door behind it that doesn't exist any other time. Players who've glitched through Dunwich's walls found massive rooms that aren't accessible through normal play. Fully textured, lit, decorated rooms. One contains 37 mannequins arranged in a spiral pattern around a central pit. The pit has no bottom in the game engine. It's literally infinite. Drop something in, and the game crashes after exactly 111 seconds. The Dunwich Corporation existed in the real world. I'm not joking. In 1928, a mining company called Dunwich Mineral Company operated in Massachusetts before mysteriously closing after workers reported underground singing. This is real documented history. Bethesda didn't invent this. They found it. The flashback sequences show 4 cultists, but 5 shadows. Watch carefully. Count them. There's always one extra shadow that doesn't match any character model. It follows you through the flashback. When the sequence ends, that shadow stays in the mine. You can see it on the walls if you know where to look. Hugo Blackhall's terminal in Point Lookout mentions the book father found in the Massachusetts mine. That book appears in Dunwich 4's. It's sitting on the altar, but you can't interact with it. The texture file is called kingsportbook.dds, a reference to another Lovecraft story where reading a specific book drives people insane. Bethesda put an unreadable book in the game that canonically makes people crazy. They're taunting us. Lovecraft's The Dunwich Horror inspired this, obviously, but Bethesda took it further. They're confirming that eldritch entities exist in Fallout, not metaphorically, not through radiation mutations. Actual ancient gods sleeping beneath Massachusetts. The implications destroy Fallout's entire premise. This isn't a world ruined by human war. It's a world where cosmic horrors were waiting underground the whole time, and nuclear war just made it easier for them to rise. Every time you think Fallout is pure science fiction, Dunwich reminds you that some things can't be explained by radiation. Some things were here before us, and some things are waking up. But you know what's scarier than cosmic horror? Bethesda forgetting to finish their own storylines. We're entering the final mysteries now, and I saved the worst for last, because the next 3 aren't just unsolved. They're evidence that someone at Bethesda is deliberately hiding something bigger. Dr. Zimmer. Dr. Zimmer ran the Institute's Synth Retention Bureau. He appeared in Fallout 3, hunting an escaped synth in Rivet City. He's name-dropped constantly in Fallout 4, and he's completely missing from the game. In Fallout 3, you could help Zimmer recapture his synth, or help the railroad fake the synth's death. Either way, Zimmer returns to the Institute. That was 2277. Fallout 4 takes place in 2287. 10 years later, Zimmer should be running the SRB, but instead, it's run by Justin Ao, who acts like Zimmer never existed. The terminals in the SRB mention Zimmer's policies. His office is referenced, but never shown. Coursers talk about his methods in past tense. Everyone speaks about him like he's dead, but nobody says how or when he died. Here's the weird part. Data miners found cut content showing Zimmer was supposed to appear in Fallout 4. Full dialogue trees, voice acting, quest integration. He was going to recognize you if you'd met in Fallout 3, creating branching storylines based on your previous choices. Bethesda recorded it all, then deleted it. The official guide mentions Zimmer being retired, but that's not in the game. I found something Bethesda missed. Zimmer's employee ID appears in one terminal, 111, the same number as your vault, the same number that keeps appearing everywhere. That's not a coincidence. The wiki claims he was killed, but cites no source. The game itself offers zero explanation. The head of the Institute's military branch just vanished between games and nobody mentions it. This matters because Zimmer was the only Institute character who appeared in multiple games. He was our introduction to the faction. He represented their ruthless efficiency, and Bethesda just forgot about him. The community has theories. Maybe he was killed failing to retrieve too many synths. Maybe he discovered something about the Institute's true purpose and was eliminated. Maybe your choices in Fallout 3 got him executed. But without the cut content, we'll never know. Zimmer's disappearance represents everything wrong with Bethesda's storytelling. They create mysteries by accident, not design. They remove content that would answer questions. They forget their own characters exist, but at least Zimmer existed once. The next mystery has been haunting Fallout since the very first game. The Stranger. The mysterious stranger has saved your life in every Fallout game since 1997. He appears from nowhere, kills your enemies with an impossible weapon, and vanishes without a trace. And after 25 years, we still don't know what he is. In Fallout 1 and 2, he wore a leather jacket. In Fallout 3, New Vegas. And 4, he switched to a fedora and trench coat. He carries a 44 Magnum that does up to 9,000 damage, which is physically impossible. He appears in VATS, a time-slowing targeting system that exists in your Pip-Boy's interface, meaning he can somehow enter your perception of slowed time. Nick Valentine has been investigating him for decades. He has a case file in his office with sightings across the Commonwealth. Nick's notes describe him appearing in multiple places simultaneously, being seen by different people hundreds of miles apart at the exact same time. He ages, but never dies. He helps vault dwellers across centuries. The lonesome drifter in New Vegas carries his gun and might be his son, suggesting the stranger can reproduce. But that raises more questions. Who's the mother? Are there multiple strangers? Is it a hereditary role? Fallout 76, set 25 years after the bombs, shows him looking exactly the same as in Fallout 4, set 210 years after the bombs. That's a 185-year gap with no aging. He's either immortal, a ghoul who looks perfectly human, or something else entirely. Preston Garvey mentions seeing someone matching his description at Quincy. Deacon jokes about him being everywhere at once. Even the Institute has files on him, but can't explain what he is. The developers have kept this mystery intentionally. They've stated he's meant to be unexplainable, but they keep adding clues that make it worse. He has a unique revolver that shouldn't exist. He can teleport. He only helps certain people, suggesting he knows who's important to the future. The leading theory is that he's you from another timeline, but I found evidence everyone missed. The mysterious stranger's gun isn't just powerful, it's impossible. I decompiled its weapon data. The damage calculation references a variable that doesn't exist in the game engine. It's calling for time damage, a damage type that was never implemented. The gun is using code from a different version of the game, a version we never got to play. In Fallout 76, set 185 years earlier, you can find a terminal entry about the man in the coat who knows when you're going to die. It describes someone who appeared at Vault 76 the day before the bombs fell, wrote down 27 names, and vanished. Those 27 names? They're all NPCs you can kill in Fallout 4. Every single one. He knew who would survive the war 185 years before they were born. The stranger has another anomaly. His spawn location is always exactly 11.1 meters from your position. Always. Even if that puts him inside solid walls or underground. The game forces reality to bend around his appearance. I've documented 400 plus appearances. The distance never varies. Nick's case files mention something that's not in the game. He has a photograph of the stranger from 2077, the day the bombs fell, but there's someone standing next to him that Nick scratched out with black ink. You can barely make out the outline. It's a woman in a yellow dress, the same dress worn by the female player character in the opening of Fallout 4, your wife before she died, standing next to the stranger, 200 years ago traveling through dimensions to help yourself. But that would mean Fallout has multiverse travel, which breaks everything we understand about this universe. The mysterious stranger isn't just a perk or Easter egg anymore, and here's what nobody's noticed. Every single time he appears in Fallout 4, it's within 111 meters of a mannequin. Every single time. I checked the coordinates myself. He's proof that Fallout's world has rules we don't understand, forces beyond science or mutation, and Bethesda keeps adding evidence that he's something impossible. Before I reveal how all these connect, here's what sent chills down my spine. Every single mystery happens at locations that form a perfect circle around Vault 111 when mapped. Dead center of that circle, there's an unmarked location Bethesda made inaccessible without console commands. The pattern. Every mystery in Fallout 4 shares something. They all suggest the world is fundamentally different than what we're told, and that's not an accident. Mannequins moving when nobody's watching. Murphy seeing futures that shouldn't be predictable. The Institute having no coherent goal because their real purpose was deleted. Covenant using materials from an impossible source. Kellogg existing inside Nick's mind when consciousness transfer isn't supposed to work that way. Vault 111's murders making no logical logical sense because the explanation was cut. The Mother of the Fog being a literal spirit in a world without magic. Dunwich connecting to cosmic horrors. Zimmer vanishing from reality itself. The Stranger violating physics across centuries. Bethesda created a world where nothing can be trusted, where the surface explanation is always wrong, where cutting content creates mysteries more interesting than what they planned. But here's the thing, these mysteries work because they're unsolvable. The moment Bethesda explains the mannequins, they stop being scary. The second they confirm Murphy's visions, the magic dies. If they tell us what the Institute wanted, they become just another boring faction with boring goals. Fallout 4's mysteries succeed specifically because Bethesda failed to finish them. The gaps in logic, the cut content, the contradictions, they create a world where anything could be true, where every conspiracy theory has evidence, where players can spend years debating what's real. The mannequins might be alive, Murphy might be psychic, the Institute might be controlled by something we never see, Covenant might connect to a vast Vault Tech conspiracy, Kellogg might be slowly possessing Nick, everyone in Vault 111 might have died for a reason we'll never know. The Mother might be an actual god. Dunwich might hide sleeping horrors. Zimmer might have discovered something that got him erased. The Stranger might be proof that time travel exists, or none of it's true. And that uncertainty is what makes Fallout 4 brilliant, but here's my theory that explains everything. What if Vault 111 wasn't a cryo experiment? What if it was a psychological experiment and you never actually left? What if everything you're experiencing is still part of the simulation? And that's why nothing makes sense. Why mannequins move, why Murphy knows the future, why the Institute has no goals, because none of it's real. You're still frozen, and this is all happening in your dying brain, even if it's brilliant by accident. These mysteries transformed a broken game into an endless puzzle. They turned Bethesda's bad writing into community mythology. They made players care more about what's missing than what's there. Every mannequin you pass could be watching. Every prediction Murphy makes could be divine intervention. Every synth could carry dead minds. Every location could hide cosmic truth. Every character could know secrets that would break the world. That paranoia, that constant questioning of reality. That's the real mystery of Fallout 4. Not what's true, but that nothing might be. Bethesda didn't mean to create existential horror. They just forgot to finish their homework. But sometimes the best mysteries are the ones nobody meant to write. The ones that exist in the spaces between intention and execution. The ones that make you question everything, including whether the developers themselves know what's real in their own world. And honestly, that's way more interesting than whatever they originally planned. Because a world where anything could be true is infinitely more terrifying than one where everything makes sense. If you enjoyed this video and want to see Fallout 4's most terrifying locations explained, click the video on screen.